Hello there and welcome to World News Program coming to you live on All 24 News. I'm your host, Kunfa Zachary, and up next are the top stories. In Rafah, a dozen attacks by the occupation forces left over 100 people dead, adding to the toll amid international warnings at a potential invasion by the Zionists in the area. Also ahead, nearly 1 million Palestinians in Gaza have lost their homes, according to the World Bank, as Zionist settlers are initiating a colonial plan in the Strip. Also coming up, Algerian lawyers file a genocide complaint at The Hague against the Zionist entity. Meanwhile, mass protests in Arab and Western nations demand an end to Gazan suffering. And dozens killed and injured in U.S. raids with 125 missiles on Syria and Iraq, and Biden denies any intent for regional conflict. Meanwhile, the European Union is cautioning about the Red Sea situation. The details after the break. Hello again and welcome to the program. First off, the unfortunate unfolding events in Palestine. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza reports 12 massacres by Zionist forces in the past 24 hours, resulting in 107 deaths and 165 injuries. The total casualties from Zionist aggression have now reached 27,238 martyrs and 66,452 injured since October 7th. To the toll of the latest Zionist airstrikes in Rafah, which killed 26, mostly children and women. Thousands are missing and rescue efforts face obstacles. The UN, meanwhile, is warning of a potential invasion, while Palestine's foreign ministry fears forced displacement of 1.5 million. Here's Osama Ayadi with the report.
Rafah, once a safe haven, is now sadly a mass grave for Gazan residents fleeing the northern bombing. Overnight, 2 separate airstrikes left a devastating toll, at least 15 killed, including women and kids. According to the registration office, the first strike hit a residential building east of Rafah, wiping out 11 Hijazi family members, including 4 women and 3 children.
They called me and told me that your nephew's house and your brother's house, they were martyred. I came to see. I did not expect that. It's Hassan and his son. Previously, they struck his house in the refugee camp, and his wife, who is my niece. Now, they have finished them all. Hassan, Ibrahim and Usama, and yes, his sons as well.
Another hit struck a house in the Jenin refugee camp in Rafah, killing at least 2 men and 2 women from the Hams family. The bodies of 15 people from the 2 families now rest in Abu Yusuf al-Najjar Hospital, the main health facility in Rafah.
They killed the children while they were sleeping. It's their fate. They were sleeping. We found the house collapse on us. We have nothing, thank God. It's aimless, while the whole world is watching, and no one cares. We have no one on our side, other than God, and we thank God.
Now the occupation forces, without skipping a beat, followed through despite the UN's Friday warning that Rafah might become a new hotspot in this genocidal war. Jens Lark, the UN's man in charge of humanitarian affairs, expressed his worry about what would come next.
So I want to emphasize our deep concern about the escalation of hostilities in Khan Yunis, which has resulted in an increase in the number of internally displaced people seeking refuge in Rafah. In recent days, thousands of Palestinians have continued to flee to the south, which is already hosting over half the Gaza's population of some 2.3 million people. Most are living in makeshift structures, tents, or out in the open. Rafah is a pressure cooker of despair, and we fear for what comes next.
The Palestinians are taking the brunt of these daily massacres orchestrated by the apartheid regime of the Zionist forces. The death toll is skyrocketing. Aids are either cut off or barely making a dent, leaving 2.3 million Palestinians, with 1.7 million losing their refuge, hanging in the balance.
To other figures now, as the World Bank disclosed that 45% of residential buildings in Gaza are fully destroyed, leaving nearly 1 million people without homes. Ongoing aggression since October 7th has led to the complete destruction of 34,000 out of 55,000 homes, a rate of approximately 60%. Meanwhile, in the same context, the Palestinian Office for Land, Defense and Settlement Resistance unveils a colonial plan in the Gaza Strip with settlement movements as its initial step. The plan aims to establish random outposts in the West Bank along the Gaza border, paving the way for colonization points within the Strip in the coming months.
The settlers have launched the starting point for a colonial plan that they intend to implement in the coming months in the Gaza Strip. According to the plan, the colonization nuclei must be prepared for the day of implementation, and their members must arrive carrying their gear and equipment for colonization from the families of the colonists who have expressed their approval for settlement in the Gaza Strip.
To international reactions now, Belgium, currently holding the European rotating presidency, voices concern over the unprecedented Zionist military escalation against Palestinian civilians in southern Gaza. Belgian Foreign Minister Haja Habib expresses deep concern during an informal EU foreign ministers meeting in Brussels, specifically highlighting the situation in Rafah.
The attacks contradict humanitarian law if they occur in the area where there are over 1 million displaced people. It's a huge concern. We ask for restraint and we ask for dialogue and diplomacy. It's the only way we can calm down the situation in the Middle East.
The Union of Algerian Lawyers Organizations has filed the first complaints at the International Criminal Court in The Hague against those involved in committing genocide crimes against the Palestinian people. The report is based on collected documents, including photos and videos from credible sources, referencing official statements of occupation leaders admitting to or calling for these crimes. The action aligns within President Abdelmadjid Tebboun's call for legal measures against perpetrators of crimes against Palestinians. Hundreds of thousands demonstrated on Saturday across the globe in solidarity with Palestine, demanding an end to the genocidal crimes committed by the Zionist occupation against Palestinians in Gaza. Here's Salman Asib with the report.
In a show of solidarity with Palestinians, thousands hit the streets of central London after nearly 4 months of the Gaza Strip distressing genocidal war. Waving placards, Palestinian flags, and chanting "Ceasefire now." The demonstrators marched near the BBC's new broadcasting house, later moving on to Whitehall.
The main reason we are here in the street of London, we're asking for ceasefire for the continuous genocide in Gaza. So we are hoping that the UK government will listen and put pressure over the Israeli government to stop the bombing of Gaza and attacking Palestinians. Until now, I hear they are reaching Rafah now, and there's no place for Palestinians to go whatsoever. So yeah, we are here to stop the killing.
I think it's showing the people in positions of political power that the people have a will. The people are watching their actions and the things that they're saying, the causes that they're supporting or not supporting, and that we will use our power to vote.
Over in the US, President Joe Biden's visit in Michigan was also met with protests from some of the state's sizable Arab American community, urged a ceasefire in the strife-ridden Gaza Strip.
We feel disappointed. We're, disgusted by how the Biden administration is handling the situation. They're continuing to be complicit in this genocide. They are requesting more money to send to Israel, $14 billion that they want to send to Israel to continue its war crimes on the Palestinian people.
It's disgusting. I don't know how anyone can support this. I have no words. It's just disgusting. I mean, like, I'm seeing like dead babies on my Instagram feed every morning. It's crazy.
The resounding global call for peace also reached the streets of Nouakchott, where hundreds hit the streets, saying no to the ongoing Zionist aggression. They marched with the Do Not Let Gaza Down vibe, ending with a lively UN-backed festival. Meanwhile, Moroccans, unlikely their government with 120 big demos, slammed the Zionist aggression in Gaza and other Palestinian cities. In the face of such a brutal genocidal war, compassionate citizens worldwide refuse to stay idle. Instead, they join forces across borders, raising their voices for peace, loud and clear.
To other topical news, U.S. forces launched airstrikes on Iranian Revolutionary Guard and Al-Quds force sites in Syria and Iraq on Friday, responding to an attack that killed 3 American soldiers in Jordan. Over 125 missiles were used in the operation that targeted more than 80 places, actually sparked many global reactions. Here's Islam Said with the report.
In a key move, the U.S. targeted 85 sites in Iraq and Syria, unleashing over 125 precision munitions via long-range bombers. The mission, as per the U.S. Central Command statement, aimed to respond to recent provocations.
U.S. Central Command forces conducted airstrikes in Iraq and Syria against Iran Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Quds Force, and affiliated militia groups. U.S. military forces struck more than 85 targets with numerous aircraft, to include long-range bombers flown from United States. The airstrikes employed more than 125 precision munitions.
President Biden assured that such military actions would persist as necessary, emphasizing Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's characterization of these strikes as the commencement of the U.S. response. Yet again, Biden reiterated the U.S. intention to sidestep a full-scale conflict with Iran in the already turbulent Middle East. Washington justified the raid, citing a paramilitary forces attack on a U.S. military outpost in Jordan. The aftermath reportedly caused major damage to homes and private properties, leading to casualties. Global reactions varied, with Iraq and Syria denouncing the strikes as violation on their sovereignty. Meanwhile, Syria and Iran warned of a potential regional conflict and heightened tensions.
These airstrikes constitute a violation of Iraqi sovereignty, undermine the efforts of the Iraqi government, and pose a threat that could lead Iraq and the region to dire consequences. The outcomes will have severe implications on security and stability in Iraq and the surrounding region.
The strikes served to inflame the conflict in the Middle East in an extremely dangerous way and added to Washington's record of violations against Syria's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the safety of its people, proving once again that it is the main source of global instability. The airstrikes are violations of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria and Iraq and represent another adventurous and strategic mistake by the United States that will result only in increased tension and instability in the region. The U.S. attacks were designed to overshadow the Zionist regime's crimes in Gaza.
The EU voiced concerns, with Joseph Borrell highlighting the explosive situation in the region. He dismissed the prospect of calming the Red Sea until tensions in Gaza resolved, emphasizing the broader implications of the ongoing geopolitical turmoil.
Once and again, that the Middle East is a boiler that can explode. And certainly there is attacks both in Lebanon border, north and south, there is attack in Syria, there are attacks in Iraq, attack in the Red Sea. That's what we decided this Navy mission, and that's why we call everybody to try to avoid an escalation.
The attacks on U.S. sites are contextualized within the broader dynamics of the region. They're seen as a retaliatory response to American support for the conflict involving the Zionist entity on Gaza. Notably, these airstrikes coincide with the delicate negotiations for a hostage release and a potential ceasefire between the Zionist entity and Hamas.
Russia's foreign ministry accuses Washington of escalating the Middle East conflict with retaliatory strikes against what the U.S. calls Iran-affiliated militias in Iraq and Syria. Russian Deputy Envoy to the UN, Dmitry Polyansky, on Saturday announced that Russia has sought an immediate session of the UN Security Council on February 5th in response to the U.S. aggression.
It is obvious that the airstrikes are deliberately designed to further inflame the conflict by attacking almost without pause the facilities of allegedly pro-Iranian groups in Iraq and Syria. The United States is purposefully trying to drive the largest countries in the region into conflict.
The Yemeni Houthi group confirms 3 airstrikes by American and British forces on Saada governorate in the north on Saturday. U.S. media reports additional defense strikes inside Yemen against Houthi military targets, citing an imminent threat.
In victory for the oppression of the Palestinian people, who until this moment have been subjected to aggression and siege, the missile forces carried out a military operation against specific targets of the Israeli enemy in al-Shrash area in southern occupied Palestine. The targeted operation was carried out with a number of ballistic missiles. The armed forces confirmed their continued implementation of their religious and moral duties and humanity towards the oppressed Palestinian people in response to the call of our free Yemeni people and the calls of free people of our Arab and Islamic nation. The armed forces will not hesitate to carry out more military operations against the Zionist enemy on land and at sea until the aggression stops and the siege on the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip is lifted.
The Yemen's Houthi group launched a military operation with ballistic missiles targeting southern occupied Palestine. Houthi spokesman vows further actions until the aggression stops and the Gaza Strip siege is lifted.
Triumph in the oppressed Palestinian people, who until this moment were subjected to aggression and siege. The missile force of Yemeni armed forces carried out a military operation against specific targets of the Israeli enemy in the al-Shrash area in the south of occupied Palestine with a number of ballistic missiles.
To some other regional issues now, Algeria's Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf pledges support for a Libyan solution during a visit to Tripoli. Discussions with Libyan leaders include bilateral ties, regional issues like Palestine and Gaza, and cooperation priorities. The talks also cover upcoming elections and efforts by the UN and African Union for Libyan reconciliation. Still with the African continent, Senegalese President Macky Sall, just hours before the start of the electoral campaign, announced the cancellation of a decree setting the presidential elections on February 25th. This unprecedented move comes after concerns about the integrity of 2 judges on the Constitutional Council, prompting the formation of a parliamentary committee to investigate. It marks the first time since 1963 that presidential elections by direct universal suffrage have been postponed in Senegal.
I signed Decree 2024-106 of the 3rd of February 2024, repealing Decree 2023-2283 of the 29th of November 2023, convening the electoral body. For my part, my solemn undertaking not to stand in the presidential election remains unchanged. I will initiate an open national dialogue to create the conditions for free, transparent and inclusive elections in a Senegal that is at peace and reconciled.
Moving on to the European continent now, just as calm started to return in France, European farmers from countries like the Netherlands, Belgium, Greece and Poland are voicing dissatisfaction with issues such as debts, cheap imports and price pressures. More details with Sofian Kinturi.
In a sweeping wave of discontent, various European farmers, including the Netherlands, Belgium, Greece, and Poland, stay united against inadequate pay, stringent regulations, and the influx of inexpensive exports. Farmers in Spain, Italy, Germany, and Romania are also joining in, advocating for decisive action.
We are protesting here to show our discontent on what the European Union is currently proposing when it comes to the environmental legislation that will be affecting farmers, and also current frameworks that are threatening the livelihoods of farmers because it's rendering them uncompetitive with all the imported produce and food that is coming from Europe and also outside Europe.
Joining the movement that has spread across Europe, Swiss farmers drove their tractors to Geneva to protest against rising costs and low prices for agricultural products. Meanwhile, in Italy, protesters lit the night with spectacular fires near the stone statues, creating a fiery display of their grievances.
Today we still have to eat to live, and we don't have enough recognition. We have administrative complications. We have measures that are never agronomic and very far-fetched for us. We feel that our profession is completely forgetting the basics.
On the Dutch-Belgian border and on roads in Greece, farmers blocked key routes in demonstration of their discontent. Similar plans were set in motion in Poland, with intentions to close border crossings with Ukraine, as the outcry over costs and bureaucratic hurdles spread across the continent.
We're here at Cargo City. This is the gateway of many imported foods that come into us day and night. And we want to use our protest to draw attention to the fact that we implement very high standards here and have a lot of requirements, and we demand that imported goods must also meet these standards and requirements.
Despite the widespread unrest, a resolution emerged in France, where farmers gradually lifted roadblocks around Paris and other parts of the country. This comes a day after the government offered them over 400 million euros in various measures, aimed at addressing their concerns over meager earnings, burdensome regulations, and unfair competition from abroad.
Still with Europe, Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill becomes Northern Ireland's First Minister, marking the first time an Irish nationalist leads the UK territory's devolved government. The appointment follows the end of a 2-year boycott by the Democratic Unionist Party, the largest pro-UK party, which reached a deal with the UK government to address trade frictions.
Scheduled forward to the Northern Ireland Act 1998. Confirmed that I am willing to take up the office of First Minister, and I affirm the pledge of office as set out and scheduled forward to the Northern Ireland Act 1998. Today opens the door to a future, a shared future. I am honoured to stand here as First Minister. We mark a moment of equality and a moment of progress, a new opportunity to work and to grow together. Confident in that wherever we come from, whatever our aspirations are, we can and we must build our future together.
And in other news, Spanish Coast Guards rescued 47 migrants off the coast of Gran Canaria, identified as coming from Senegal. The migrants were taken to Arguineguín port and assisted by the Red Cross. Spain has seen a significant increase in irregular sea arrivals, with a 1,000% jump in January compared to the same period in 2023. The Canary Islands, a popular tourist destination, recorded an all-time high of 39,910 migrant arrivals last year. Today is Election Day in South Carolina, kicking off the Democratic presidential race. President Joe Biden is expected to win big, leading by over 60 points in polls against rivals like Republican Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson. Even though the outcome is clear, how well Biden energizes black voters in South Carolina may give hints about his broader appeal and what the needs to secure a second term. The South Carolina primary is part of the puzzle for the potential 2024 rematch between Biden and former President Donald Trump.
I voted for President Joe Biden because, I really think that he did a great job with our economy, even though there's a lot of negativity about it. When you kind of look at the facts and kind of look at the most recent reports, is very strong, you know, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't necessarily see that.
And on Saturday, North Korea's state media published photos of the testing of a cruise missiles and new land-to-air missiles off its west coast, showcasing a series of launches aimed at strengthening defense capabilities. This marked the fourth instance within slightly over a week that Pyongyang conducted such missile tests. The end of our news. Thank you for watching and take care.